Good photos require good composition. Great photos require multiple great compositions. Behind me is one of the most iconic views in the whole of England. And it's iconic for photographers because of the sheer number of compositions that can be built into a shot. Join me today as I explain why combining compositions will make your photography so much better. I've photographed this scene countless times, and if you saw my recent video about how shooting the same scene again and again can improve your photography, you'll understand why. I'll leave a link for that in the description. But there's a reason I shoot this place so often, and it's because of the sheer number of compositions that you can get out of this single point. As newcomers to photography, we tend to veer towards a compositional rule or a compositional guideline that we really like. Very often that might be thirds, that might be leading lines. And we will look for subjects and we will try to fit our subject into that rule of thirds, into that leading line. But a great photo is about multiple levels of composition. And today we're going to go through this iconic location and see how many levels of different types of composition that we can find and combine them all together. So I'm going to go and set up my Sony Alpha 7 R5 right over here, and we will have a look at which compositions we can get out of this shot by combining them all together. And trust me, there's going to be quite a few. So for our shots today, we're going to shoot in manual. We're going to have full control over the imagery. And we're going to shoot at various apertures to get the best type of shot that we can. We're going to incorporate some long exposures, and we're going to try and find as many different compositional layers in this one shot that we possibly can. So let's get into it. Now, the first and most obvious compositional rule, and the one that everybody probably learns first of all, is the rule of thirds. And this particular scene works absolutely perfectly with the thirds. Not only is the shoreline of the river here on the lower third, but the tree line is on the upper third. And then you have the mill and the cathedral on the opposite side of the river, sitting perfectly on the bottom and the upper left thirds. And then you have all the details on the right that sit beautifully on the right-hand side. So the rule of thirds just is impossible not to use in this particular composition. And perhaps the second most common rule is the rule of leading lines. And again, we have the most perfect leading line in this shot, in the form of the weir. It takes your eye right from the bottom right-hand corner all the way through to the mill, and your eye just continues up to the magnificent cathedral sitting above the mill. There are other leading lines in this shot as well, though. You've got the tree line that comes down from the right and the left, both at high and on the river level, both bringing your eye as multiple leading lines into this central scene. Again, it's another compositional rule that you can't fail to use in this particular scene. Next, we have framing, and framing is one of my favourite compositional guidelines. Here you've got several examples of framing. You've got the cathedral, which is framed by the trees and juts out above it. And then you've got this mill, which is completely surrounded by the trees and the water, bringing your eye straight to it. And that brings us on to another compositional rule, colour contrast. It's not quite so visible on a dull day like today, but the mill and the cathedral are kind of a yellowish stone. I'm not exactly sure what stone they are, but they are a very yellowish stone. And they stand out against the green of the trees and the tree line here, bringing that colour contrast to it. And beyond that, to the right is a tree that is always a different colour from the rest. It's a sort of a deep lilac colour. So you've got the contrast of that tree, which you can bring out much more in post-production, with the yellows of the stonework and the greens of the other trees. It's fantastic colour contrasts in this particular shot. Now, as well as the leading lines, we have diagonals. We've got this diagonal of the weir coming towards the mill, but we've again got the diagonals of the tree line and the roof line of the mill over there. There's multiple diagonals in this shot, all bringing our eye to our main subject. If we look at the rules of symmetry, there's not symmetry going on here as such, but there's a tension type of symmetry, almost opposite of symmetry, where the entire picture is kind of loaded to the left, where you've got the mill and the cathedral, but that gives us a weighting to the image. That draws our eye from the rest of the image all the way through to the cathedral. The whole scene has a negative weighting that brings your eye into that iconic cathedral. And of course we have foreground interest. We've talked about the weir and the leading line. Now today the water's, it's fairly slow running because it's been very dry in this part of England over the last few months really. So the weir's not running fast, but you've got this foreground interest. You've got the foam on the water which is bringing your eye through. It's stopping your eye from wandering off the bottom of the frame, and the weir is stopping your eye wandering out of the right of the frame. So the water is holding your eye and pushing your eye in towards that main part of the scene. Now, all of these compositional guidelines, rules that we've just talked about, also include layers. We've talked about the foreground, the midground, and the background of this image. All of those combined, it gives it a whole sense of depth, a feeling of 3 dimensions, which is always important in your photography. Photography being a 2-dimensional medium, you need to convey that 3rd dimension. You need to give the impression that the viewer is there, and that can only happen in 3 dimensions. So you need to have these foreground, midground, and background in order to give that depth to an image. Another compositional element that we have in this scene, which is not apparent at the moment, but I'm going to take a shot that will make it apparent, is negative space. We've talked about the water here giving us a foreground interest to the image. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slap on an ND filter and bring the exposure right the way down so we get some motion in that water. And what that will do is it will give us a negative space down here. It'll be a large area that ordinarily you might not use in a composition because there's nothing there, nothing to draw your eye. But by making it a negative space, making it nothing, you're drawing your eye away from that negative space and back into that iconic view. So this is ND10, 10 stop, ND1000. It's a free well magnetic, and if you've not seen the video that I did about the free well magnetic filters, I'll leave a link in the description below. I have 2 sets of magnetic filters. I bought the case system, which I absolutely love. It's a slightly higher end system, but Freewell asked me to do a review on these, and I really like these for the practicality. I tend to gravitate towards these more in day-to-day, and if I'm doing something a bit higher end, then I will use the case filters. But let's get this on. We're going to get into another foible that I've talked about before on this camera, and there are a few, and I'm going to do a new video about some of the other issues that I found with it, and that is getting the shutter speed down below 30 seconds. It has to be done by bulb or by buying an external intervalometer, which I don't have. It's a strange one. Most of the other cameras that I've used before, particularly the Fuji system, would allow me to get down to 8 minutes, I think even possibly 16 minutes via the controls. This one will lock me out at 30 seconds, which is really annoying, to be quite honest. At one stage, I'm going to have to buy an intervalometer to do the long exposure shots. For the moment, I'll use 30 seconds and bulb to see what we can get out of this scene. And we're going to set our aperture quite low. We're going to go for f16. That gives us the depth of field that we want to use this weir as the leading line to draw our eye through the image. We will focus just at the other side of the weir so that we get our maximum depth of field. Let's see what we can get out of this shot, and let's see what shutter speeds we can get. Let's get that cathedral and the mill on the 3rd, water line on the 3rd, tree line on the 3rd. We've got the colour contrast, we've got all these compositional rules combining, and we're at 30th of a second. And we'll give that 30 seconds and see what we get. Now, I'm not sure if it's just my eyes, and I don't know whether it's true or not, but I think I've just seen some salmon running up the weir. If you're from this area and you know that there are salmon in the river, let me know in the comments. I know there's otters here. I know a number of wildlife photographers come down here to photograph the otters, but I'm pretty sure I saw salmon, or at least something, jumping or trying to jump up over the weir. So that's the 30 seconds clear, and actually the image looks really, really nice at 30 seconds. The foam of the water is creating this negative space, but it's also creating leading lines that are bringing your eye through to the mill. That's the flow of the water heading from the faster side of the weir, which is over here, and heading out towards the middle, is actually creating a type of leading line as well as that negative space. I'm really happy with this picture, but I'm going to see if I can go a little bit slower with it as well. And to do that, I'm going to see if I can hook up the app. I'm not a big fan of camera apps, if the truth is told, but I do have the app here, and we'll see if we can connect to it. And that's one of the reasons I hate this, is because it's just so slow and cumbersome to do. Anyway, we're at 30th of a second. We can take it down to bulb, which at the moment is set for 2 minutes. So what I'm going to do is change the aperture up to f22. Now that might give us some diffraction. I've talked about that in a previous video. It's something really need to be aware of. But for the purposes of this video, where it's quite a bright sunny day, I'm actually going to go all the way down to f22 just to get that shutter speed down a little. So we're at f22, and I'm also going to lower the ISO down to 50. And we'll have a look at the histogram, see what that's giving us. In order to actually get a bulb exposure, you need to press and hold the shutter button and hold it down until the exposure kicks in. And when you take your finger off of it, it starts the countdown. In this case, it's counting down from 2 minutes. At 1 minute, I will stop the exposure and have a look at the image. And then we'll do a 2-minute exposure and see how that comes out. Now, the advantages, of course, of using an intervalometer or even the app is that you're not touching the actual camera. Even just pressing the shutter can send some sort of vibration and actually cause a camera shake. Now we're just hitting 1 minute. Let's end that exposure and let's have a look at what we've got. On this screen it looks pretty good. Let's have a look at the review. Yep, that looks really nice. And what we've got again is that motion of the water coming from this near side of the weir and bringing the eye through to the mill and the cathedral. It's a really, really nice shot. I'm really, really pleased with that. Let's give it one more go. We'll do it at 2 minutes and see what we can get out of that. So while that's just timing out, I just love this location. And as you know, I come back here time and time again for good reason. And I like to come early in the morning. It's about 6 in the morning at the moment. There's nobody here. Despite it being an iconic location for photographers, you don't get that many in the morning. Now, perhaps it's because on sunny days the light comes up behind the cathedral, but in the winter it's more over there. So it's a really good place to shoot in the winter, and also putting the drone up here when you get those foggy, misty mornings in autumn. Show you a few clips of what it looks like in autumn in the morning. It's absolutely glorious. That's the exposure ended. Let's have a little look at what we've got. Yep, that looks really, really nice. Everything comes together in this shot. You've got the leading lines, you've got the thirds, you've got the negative space, you've got the lack of symmetry, you've got motion in the water also adding to it. I think there's probably 5 or 6, perhaps more, compositional elements that are all coming together in this particular view. And it's something you find quite often in beautiful locations. Where man has built something in a beautiful location, whether it's by design or just pure accident, so many elements come together to make the image look really, really good. I'll show you a couple of examples of man and nature on the screen right now for you to have a look at, and tell me what you think of those. So as you've seen from some of the footage that I've shot and some of the images that I've shown on screen, there are so many levels of different composition in this particular scene here. Combining compositions is a really powerful way to elevate your images. And you don't have to be in an iconic location like this. Pretty much every scene that you want to photograph will have more than one composition built into it. You need to work in the two together, make them complement each other, and then you can build through to getting even more compositional elements into that shot. You just need to make sure that they all work together, bringing that focus through to the main subject of the image. In this case, the cathedral, or whatever your subject is. Now, do you have any particular favourite combinations of composition? Let me know in the comments below for that. If you've enjoyed this video, a like would be fantastic, a subscription would be even better, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.